sensitivity is the most common dietary modification at my restaurant these days. I've noticed that people feel a mistrust for gluten. They frequently see bread as a cheat food or maybe even a guilty pleasure. But interestingly enough, when I hear stories about people with gluten sensitivities that have traveled to European countries, they report being able to sometimes eat bread like there's no tomorrow. And actually also in our restaurant, I often hear folks say that they normally have problems with gluten, but they have no problem digesting our house-made whole grain sourdough bread. So how could this be? And although I'm not an authority on celiac disease, which is a very real condition, I do know that the majority of people seem to do better digesting bread that's been made with, number one, good ingredients, and number two, slow natural fermentation. And that's what we're going to be talking about in this section. So I propose that we need to create a new relationship with gluten. Instead of fearing it or demonizing it, we just need to simply eat better gluten. So how do we do that? It's a very good question. I think we start by eating bread that uses organic whole grains and is made with natural fermentation. All right, so let's get very, very scientific with this thing now. To start, flour is the result of taking a dried berry of the wheat plant and grinding it up. That's it. There are many different strains and varieties of the wheat plant that result in numerous kinds of flours with distinct and different attributes. The wheat berry has a really interesting, unique anatomy that I think is very comparable to an egg. So on the outside of the wheat berry, you have the bran, aka the eggshell. Then on the inside, you have the germ, which is going to be the baby plant, and that's similar to the egg yolk. And in the middle, you have what's called the endosperm, which is like the egg white. That's what's going to become the food for the plant. So when you take all these parts and you crush them together, you get whole wheat flour. And if you take whole wheat flour and you make it into bread, you have whole wheat bread. Now, it turns out that the bran and the germ are a little coarser and a little heavier than the endosperm. But it also turns out that the bran and the germ has the vast majority of the vitamins and minerals of the grain, whereas the endosperm is mostly protein, sugar, and starch. So just keep that one in mind. After you mill whole grain, it's possible to sift and remove some of that heavier bran and germ. And that's how we make what we'll talk about later, white flour. The phrase that we use to express how much of that grain is sifted out is called extraction rate. The higher the extraction rate, the more of the whole grain is still present in the flour. The lower the extraction rate, the less whole grain is in the flour. So 100% whole wheat bread we would describe as being 100% extraction. An artisan bread like we're going to use today is closer to 80% extraction, and white flour closer to 55% extraction. So half of the flour has been taken out. So if all things were equal, everyone would eat whole wheat bread all the time because it's better for our bodies. But interestingly enough, human beings are not so simple. Sometimes we love things that are bad for us. Go figure. So the issue with 100% whole grain bread is that it is super coarse and heavy. It's not that fun to eat. But breads that are made with sifted flour have a lighter and more palatable texture. In the 1880s, there was something that was invented that was called a roller mill. And when that was invented, it made it possible to grind and sift flour extremely quickly and very, very, very fine. And these roller mills, they actually remove a huge portion of that bran and the germ that we talked about. And that creates a sugar, starch, and gluten-loaded monstrosity that, fast forward, has now become one of the great woes of modern civilization. White bread. Dun, 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 dun. On top of all that bad stuff with the roller mill, the commercial agribusiness has started bleaching flour to make it even whiter and adding preservatives and chemicals to enable those loaves to be shipped across the country and last on the shelf for weeks. So no wonder white bread is a problem. To put it simply, you should just avoid white bread. It's bad for you. Okay, so now let's zone in on gluten a little bit more. Despite its current bad reputation, you cannot make artisan sourdough bread without gluten. Gluten allows bread dough to stretch during shaping and rise during baking. And in a very, very simplistic way, gluten traps the carbon dioxide gas that's released in fermentation, which enables your bread to have a light and fluffy texture. Interesting, right? So the ability for any given flour to develop gluten is based on what's called its protein content. The higher the protein level in a flour, the more gluten it can develop. So generally speaking, flours with over 12% protein can be used to successfully make bread. They're generally called bread flour or high protein flour. So this is what we want to be focusing on using for all of our baking activities for this course. There are other flours that have lower amounts of protein. Frequently, you might see them called AP flour, all-purpose flour, or pastry flour. And these flours have usually 6 to 8% protein. They will not work to make bread. Don't even try it. Those flours are more used for making pancakes or muffins or cakes or something like that. So in summary, when you're thinking about what flour to use for baking, you want to pay attention to really three main things. The first one is the extraction rate, which is how much whole grain is present in that flour. Number two, what's the protein content of that flour? How much gluten can it develop? Is it the right kind of flour? And then number three, which we're going to talk about right now, how is the grain farmed? It's easy to forget in our society, but flour is an agricultural product. It is created by a string of people who have put in many months of hard work. And the two main players in this story, this narrative of bread, are the farmer and the miller. The farmer is the person who grows the wheat plants. They make all the decisions about nourishing the soil, selecting seeds, plowing, pest control, watering, harvesting. It's something that we generally take for granted, but it is not an easy job. Now, the miller is the person who receives the grain from the farmer, sorts it, cleans it, grinds it, sifts it, bags it, and ships it to you, the baker. Now, there's actually two main methods to grind grain into flour. We talked about the previous one, roller milling, just a moment ago, but the one that we want to focus on is stone milling. Stone milling is an ancient way of making flour where you have two giant, and sometimes these discs are 1,000 pounds each, two giant stone discs that are rotating. The grain gets dropped in the middle and gets ground into flour. In the olden days, stone mills were powered by sometimes people pushing, sometimes donkeys, horses. Now, electric motors. But still, the stone mill is a superior way to grind flour because it doesn't heat it, doesn't cause it to oxidize, and doesn't remove the nutrition. So in short, source stone mill flour if you can. So the connection between the farmer and the miller is often really far apart. It's often quite distant. In most cases, the millers who grind the flour don't know how the grain was farmed, and the farmer that grew the flour doesn't know what happened to it. But fortunately, there are a few folks in this country who are farmer millers. This means that they oversee both the farming of the grain and the grinding of the grain, which I love. These are our people. And I'm gonna do a little quick plug here because my favorite farmer miller in the whole world is Janie's Mill. And that's what we're gonna be using to bake today. And I happen to have some of them here. Janie's Mill is located in Ashcombe, Illinois, and they're wonderful. Not only do they organically grow all the grain, but they grind it all in a refrigerated facility that's kept at 50 degrees or below, so the flour doesn't go rancid. Janie's Mill rocks. I just want to say that because I love them. In addition to that, there are a couple of other incredible farmer millers that you should check out, especially if they're closer to where you live. There's Carolina Ground, which is near Asheville, North Carolina. There's Barton Springs Mill near Austin, Texas. And there's Cairn Spring Mill near Seattle, Washington. And all these places have flour that you can buy online for your baking at home. Ancient grains, for example, spelt, rye, farro, and others like that, are amazing. And they should definitely be explored in your bread journey. But a quick note of caution. Before you jump into baking with them, I recommend mastering the core concepts and techniques of this video course using standard bread flour. Most ancient grains have really low or sometimes even non-existent levels of protein, and so they are not suitable as the main flour for bread baking. I've seen new bakers jump ahead too fast, start baking with artisan flours, and get discouraged with the results. So focus on bread flour first, then later on you can build into ancient grains. And at the end of this video course, we're gonna be talking about them a little bit more as well. All right, that wraps up our lesson about flour. Next up, we're gonna go to fermentation.